relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. I'm your host, Malik Wright. Joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Alameda. We got Marissa on the ones and twos. We appreciate that you guys are spending your morning with us. If you could do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. I want to start it off really quickly with some headline news. Shakur Stevenson, very brief. Obviously, up and coming boxer. A lot of people are excited about. A lot of people thought Tank Davis's next fight was going to be potentially Shakur Stevenson. Is out of his fight with injury. This is a guy that talks a lot on social media. He's gotten into it with so many different podcasters, so many different journalists recently because of the criticism of his cockiness and how he views himself versus how the boxing world views him, the whole 9 yards, the whole shebang. And you know what? Shakur's out. It's a big deal because this is a guy a lot of people were excited for. This guy had a lot of steam right now. He was honestly going to find himself in a huge fight after this fight, potentially, if he was able to get through this next opponent with flying colors. But, he's out of his fight. And a lot of people are like, see, this is why you should focus more on training. This is why a lot of people are taking victory laps. Here's what I'll say. I don't think now's the time to take victory laps. I think this guy Shakur is going to bounce back in a big way when he does go out there. But I think that you should take this time to reflect a little bit and focus more so on his career versus what us media pundits and us people think regarding his career. That's just my 2 cents. Dana, is there anything you want to add regarding Shakur Stevenson?
Yeah, I think, in the lead up, I went back and rewatched some of his interviews. He seemed really excited. And I saw some people say, that he wasn't ready for this challenge and he wasn't ready to take that next vault into his for his career. And I don't think that's true. And I don't think that he's downplaying this injury. And that's just what I want to take this time to really discuss. It's real. I struggle to see how this dude pulled out of the fight on purpose. And I saw some people saying, oh, he didn't want this and he's just taking this time so he gets more time to train. I think that's BS. The dude's hurt his hand, and I wouldn't read too much into it. So,
yeah, just my 2 cents. Again, I think that Shakur has everything in front of him. I believe that he'll bounce back in a big way. So again, I would just chill, him, relax a little bit on him for a little bit. There was something else I wanted to talk about today that just popped up in the news, but I guess I'll save that for our guy Parker Blake, or maybe even for tomorrow. So I'm not exactly sure if I'll discuss it, but week 1 is here. Week 2. I'm sorry. Week 2 is here. That shows you what kind of morning I'm having, guys. Week 2 is here of the NFL, and there's a lot of stuff to get into. I want to now welcome into the show our guy Parker Blake. Parker, thanks for joining me again, my man. How's it going?
Good, brother. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Week 2 of the NFL is here. Obviously week 1 was not what we had envisioned, of course, but it was interesting to say the least. While I have you here, man, I want to discuss something real quick. And before we jump into it, make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Hey, look, Devontae Adams just recently made some comments, right? And we don't have a necessarily overlay for it and all that good stuff because it literally just took place and it just came across my radar, so to speak. But Devontae Adams made some comments where he said that, and I quote, he believes Lamar Jackson is essentially the greatest, essentially, because he's changed the game of football. And I want to make sure I get his exact quotes. And so here it is. Dude changed the game. He's the best, in my opinion, best ball carrier ever. No matter what position you want to talk about, I don't think anybody as big of a threat carrying the football as Lamar Jackson. Do you agree with that sentiment, Parker? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot real quick because it's not what we discussed or what we talked about. But do you agree with that sentiment that Lamar Jackson changed the game?
I mean, I wouldn't say he necessarily changed the game. I think he's a dynamic athlete, dynamic quarterback, but I think there was guys ahead of him that really transitioned the NFL into this game that appreciates a dynamic athlete back there at the quarterback position. I think, there's definitely parts of his game that, you would like to see him be a better quarterback. Guys like Patrick Mahomes changed the game. I don't think a guy like Lamar Jackson has changed the, game at the NFL level.
Right. I agree with you. I think when he said that statement. I think that a lot of people were kind of up in arms, and a lot of people are still kind of up in arms right now. It's kind of finally making his waves through the NFL Twitter world or the NFL cycle, if you will. Like, does he actually believe that? I think Lamar Jackson has been dynamic. I think that he is one of the best athletes that we've ever seen come into the NFL. But for me, I to change the game, man, I think Michael Vick, man. I think guys like
Yep.
Michael Vick really show that, hey, being a ball carrier as a quarterback can be the norm for your offense, and you can be a weapon in doing so. And then you talk about guys like Cam Newton, who just absolutely revolutionized the position in terms of just putting that together with he could break off a 40-yard run, and then the next play hit you with a deep pass for 35 yards. It's one of those things where I feel like, I don't know, I think there's a little recency bias kind of creeping in there when we talk about a guy like Lamar Jackson. But here's what I will say. I feel like Lamar Jackson's the first mainstream quarterback that is a dual threat that has been accepted widely by the NFL. And what I mean by that is he has two MVPs to show that. He has two MVPs to show that. And I think it's one of those things where when we look at Lamar Jackson, he is a phenomenal talent running with the football. But one could make the argument that those guys I just named, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, might be better passers than him. One can make that argument. I think that's a pretty fair statement. Danny, what say you?
Yeah, I think the whole sentiment that Lamar changed the game, I disagree with. Maybe he was the one that, put it on the forefront for the next generation of guys like, Jaden Daniels, of guys like Justin Fields to really see that it's widely accepted. But I went back and rewatched Michael Vick, and he's the one, if anything, he changed the game. I mean, you look at him, Randall Cunningham, he's a guy way back that I remember that was, the first to really be on the rushing standpoint. But as far as really changing the game, I don't think so. Maybe he did it at the best possible level, and maybe he's a better runner than Michael Vick. But when I look at changing the game, Vick was probably the one that I was like, okay, that dude, cover of Madden, that's the one thing everybody talked about. I mean, I was barely old enough to play that Madden, but I just remember everybody saying that dude is a cheat code. So he's the one I would really credit to. And Lamar is the one that kind of has made it widely acceptable for the rest of these quarterbacks to kind of do that.
Yeah, that's where I stand. That's my stance on the whole Lamar Jackson discourse. But hey, listen, Park, let's talk about some of the week one takeaways. Week one is in the books. We're on to week two. A lot of good, a lot of bad, some ugly. I want to get your overall thoughts. What are some of your week one takeaways of this NFL week one?
I think the thing I've taken away the most out of week one is that football is healing, and it is officially once again acceptable to run the football. I think the teams that are going to run the ball well and are going to be able to gash teams, especially late in games, those are going to be the teams that are able to, squeak out those close wins. They're going to be able to kill clock. They're going to be able to, keep teams on their heels where there's nothing they can do. I mean, we saw that in the Bengals game, the Lions game, especially in overtime, even the 49ers game, where if you're able to, even if it's just up a score or a couple field goals, I mean, you're able to get in there, you're able to milk that clock. And if a defense can't stop the run, they can't get the offense back on the field. And when you're facing these high-level quarterbacks that are starting to be, found across the entire league, but especially in the AFC, if you can dominate the clock and just keep, these long sustained drives, that's the key to victory, especially for some of these teams that might not have high-level roster talent. I've always said, if you're rebuilding your roster from scratch, you want to go for a solid run game, a solid offensive line and running back, and you want a great punter because you want to win the field position battle and you want to be able to have time of possession. So it's fun for me as an offensive line guy. I love the run game. I'm really excited to see some of these teams. It's not necessarily new schemes per se, but just guys really, taking advantage of defenses going for smaller, more athletic guys. They're just going to start, bruising teams.
We talked about it a couple of shows ago. I want to say on Monday's show and on Tuesday's show. There were some teams that were extremely underwhelming on Sunday, to be honest with you. The Falcons were a big one for me. To not even put up a single touchdown, man. It was very, 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 shocking, I would say, because like with all the firepower that they had and all the hype, coming into the season, I really expected that maybe the Falcons would be able to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we know the Pittsburgh Steelers always stay ready, and that was a weird game because they didn't score a touchdown, right? Meaning the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't score a touchdown at all. And I think it was just one of those things where it was just very, very Shocking to see the Falcons lose in the fashion that they lost, especially with them being home. There's just too much, man. There was just too much that I thought that, hey man, at the end of the day, maybe this was just a week one blubber, if you will. But what were some teams that were underwhelming to you? Of course, not named the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, no, I think, obviously I came on last week, talked about the Raiders, and they had a divisional matchup week 1, and I really feel like they didn't utilize their personnel on offense as they should
Mhm.
have, and that's kind of going to be, I think, the theme for this team. And I brought it up last week. They're either going to, be an extremely successful team, kind of this whole AFC West. Either you're going to be pushing for that one spot, pushing for a good playoffs berth, or you're going to be struggling. You're going to be, your coaching is not going to get you there. You're going to have the personnel, maybe even a strong roster build overall when you're looking at it. But if you can't utilize that talent, you can't make things happen for your team, and you're only going to put up 10 points in a game where you should have definitely scored a lot more than 10. That's going to be a long-term struggle. And I know you guys have already touched on it this week as far as that coaching situation already. But that's just one of the teams that really let me down personally. I got a lot of text messages after coming on Friday, and then Sunday happened, and I was like, oh, this isn't great. But
Yeah, there were a bunch of other games that I want to kind of touch on too, real quick, before we get to week 2. One thing I personally want to get your take on. I'm not sure, how much of the Saints versus Panthers game that you saw, but what the hell is going on over there, right? Bryce Young he looked awful. Do you think that it's the coaching staff? Do you think it's Bryce Young? Do you think that they turn it around? Is it the O-line? What do you think about the Panthers?
I think Bryce Young was a guy I wasn't high on in the draft cycle in general, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised to see him struggle. It has been underwhelming to see some of the pieces they brought in on the offensive line really struggle. I mean, Ike Ekwonu hasn't really been able to settle in and find a spot there on the front. Chandler Zavala is a guy that I ended up buying into the hype late into the draft cycle when he came out, and he's just been – he doesn't even play half the time. I don't think he played in week 1. And so, when you're trying to turn over this offensive line room to give Bryce Young the help that you believe he needs, and then none of these pieces are landing – that's not going to help you. Again, you can't establish the run. You can't give your quarterback time to throw. Your quarterback's not throwing well as it is. This offense is just getting in its own way, and it can't stay out of its own way.
Completely. Yeah, they looked awful in that week 1 game. It was a divisional game, but the Saints absolutely mollywopped them, especially the Saints defense. Credit to the defense coordinator. But one last thing I want to touch on before we go to week 2. Is there a certain team that you feel like isn't getting enough respect right now, whether they did win, but nobody's talking about them, or you were just extremely impressed with their week 1 performance?
And I'm sure people are talking about it, but I have to always go for the Lions. I love the Lions.
Yeah.
I think, the way that they were able to handle themselves throughout the whole course of that game. I know there's all the controversy over the overtime rules, but the way that they were able to just go 60 plus yards in overtime on the ground without even having to put the ball in the air. That is, again, like I mentioned earlier, how you can dominate teams down the stretch, especially in an NFC when you're able to do this against some of these higher level defenses, which we'll see if they're able to throughout the year.
Yeah.
But if they're able to just lean on that rushing game and let, Goff just be a game manager, let him sit back there and, take his shots when he has to, but not have to really lean on him to win you football games down the stretch. They're going to be a strong team. And I'm excited to see how deep they're able to go this year.
Completely. And speaking of strong teams, let's look over to week 2. And Parker, this is kind of your time. You've obviously looked at the schedule. You've obviously made your predictions and stuff. I want to kind of get your thoughts on your early takeaways and your early expectations for this week, whether it's, a specific game like the Buccaneers versus the Lions, looking at the 49ers versus Sam Darnold in his return. What's your early thoughts for NFL week 2 and any predictions you got?
Well, obviously you have to talk about Sam Darnold. Is he going to look like, the best quarterback of all time again this week? Or is he going to come out and be the Sam Darnold that he has been? I liked him coming out. I thought he wasn't ever really maximized until now. I think this is exactly what he's built to do. And it's good that someone's actually finally allowing him to be the quarterback that he is. I am also interested to see how this Tennessee-New York game goes. It's two teams that, could be awful teams this year, could be average teams this year, and could even be sneaky, playoff teams at the end of the year. I know Tennessee's a team that I really liked coming into the year. I was interested to see what they were going to do. I didn't necessarily have lofty expectations, but I was like, oh, this team could really make a push. And they looked awful in week 1. I know you guys have talked about the Jets. I know we've talked about the Jets. And, people really have high expectations for them, and I don't see it. So I'm always going to be watching the Jets until they are officially out of the race, if they get to that point, to see if they're able to turn it around and see if they're able to show me why people were really excited about them. And then obviously I think the final game that I'm really interested to watch is tonight's game, Buffalo, Miami. I mean, those are another two teams where they're roller coasters, right? They're going to have really good games, they're going to have really bad games, and that's why it's fun when they match up, because if they both have a top level game, that's a super exciting game to see. But we've also seen them play each other when neither of them can get anything going. So that's kind of just my quick thoughts on week 2.
You know, Parker, Daniel kind of went over to week 2 a little bit sooner than I wanted, because I'm still at week 1 to some degree. Because Parker, you had some interesting thoughts. You had some interesting thoughts on the Jets. Obviously, you were very critical of the Jets, especially on Twitter. You know, I remember you tagged me, so I knew you were pretty excited to jump on the show this week. We got to talk about that, man. They were everybody's offseason darling. A lot of people were talking about the New York Football Jets. This is the part where we got to talk. We got to listen. Me and Parker, we don't really like to run laps too much, but I'm gonna run laps real quick.
All right.
I told people that the Jets were all hype. I did. I said it. I didn't believe in it. A lot of people were like, Aaron Rodgers this, Aaron Rodgers that. I still felt like that was a team that we would have needed to see gel. And what we saw happen Monday night is we saw a team like the San Francisco 49ers punch them in the mouths and show them who they were, or show them who they are, if you will. I think this speaks to a bigger issue, though, with the Jets, though, Parker. And the bigger issue it speaks to for me is I don't think that their head coach in Robert Saleh is a winner. I don't think he knows how to win. And I think what you do is you take a guy in Aaron Rodgers who has won in his career, who's had success, who's literally won a Super Bowl, right, with a Mike McCarthy as his head coach, albeit only one time. I think they thought that getting Aaron Rodgers in here was going to be the cure to all of their shortcomings, right? They thought that that defense that was so elite last year was going to be elite this year. It might be. They thought that they could rely on Allen Lazard to be their wide receiver one. And now you've got pundits who I'm looking at. You have pundits, you have people who jump up with a hot mic and they say, you know what? I've got an idea to cure the Jets' issues. You want to know what that idea is? Let's trade for Davante Adams, because Davante Adams will rectify all the issues that the hand-picked, right? Hear me out. The hand-picked Jets receiving core and Jets roster are facing right now. And I don't buy that. I don't think Davante Adams comes in here and this team is just clicking. Listen, he's a very good receiver. I still think he's top 5 in the National Football League. Hell, he might even be some people's wide receiver 1 still in the National Football League. I just don't think Davante Adams is the cure to all of their issues. It doesn't hurt to bring a guy like that in, but I think the bigger issue is Robert Saleh should be on the hot seat if they don't make some noise this year, because this is another year wasted of Aaron Rodgers. And the guy, every offseason, it feels like he flirts with the idea of maybe I'll retire. Oh, let me go on my darkroom retreat and then figure out if, this is something I want to continue to do. Parker, what say you, though?
Yeah, no, and I think even outside of the Jets, when you look around the league, we talked about it with the Bengals, where you want to bring in these guys that know how to win, whether it's guys with Super Bowl rings, it's guys with national championships. And again, coaching staffs need to have that same mentality as well. And that's where I loved when you guys talked about it earlier this week. It doesn't feel like there's really anybody in that Jets organization that does know how to win. And as dumb as that can sound to some people, I mean, when you've been around the game, once you taste it, you have a different mentality approaching every single season after that. You always want to get back to that. You know what it takes to get back to that. And that's where I agree with you completely from some of the points you brought up earlier this week. Again, I mean, they don't have it. When they're in a position where it feels like they want to be all in, they're saying, oh, this is, we're in our Super Bowl window. We're going to invest all this, not only cap, but draft picks. And we're going to build this roster that we feel like is a super roster. And we're going to build this Super Bowl caliber team. It doesn't feel like they've done that. And that's where, I can appreciate a move like getting a Davante Adams, because again, that does signify that you are approaching it with that all in mentality. But like you mentioned, at the end of the day, Robert Saleh isn't a great head coach in my opinion. I think
Thank you.
we saw that on Hard Knocks when he was getting in there and just ripping apart his team. I mean, you can't lead that way. There's some guys that can lead in that style, but you can't go about it doing it that way. Even if you look around this team, who are the true leaders on this team? Is Aaron Rodgers a leader on this team? Do you want the leader of your team, going on vacations and missing camp? I know a lot of Jets fans, talk like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. He's a vet. Everyone knows what he can do. But you want that guy there. We talk about it with Joe Burrow missing training camp for injuries. It's like, oh, he's just not out there. You want him out there. And so when you look around this entire team, you've lost some significant pieces. Sure, you've brought in some pieces, but they're also aging pieces. They're pieces that are near the end of their career. And, people talk about it in business all the time. Once you have one foot out the door, whether or not you're truly considering it, once that thought crosses your mind, you can consider it over. We talk about it, not we, but people talk about it in the UFC world all the time. Once you've flirted with retirement, you might as well just hang it up because you're not going to have that competitive fire anymore. And that's where I feel like the Jets are. You have a head coach that it really feels at times that he's out of his own depth. And you have this roster that you feel like you've constructed to be this superpower, but they're not. You're not getting the production out of that. You're not getting really anything that can lean that way. And so that's where I don't even know if the people in the building believe that they are really the Super Bowl contender that they're getting pushed to be.
Obviously the Jets truther has to step on our opinions right now and say what he has to. He's wagging his finger around. Like he's at a political debate or something like that.
This is a political debate. One minute.
But go ahead. Let's hear you.
I respect what you guys saying. And hold on.
You don't give a damn about any
Look at this guy.
On this
Look
show.
at this guy. Huh?
I don't give a damn about no damn respect on this show.
Listen, I agree with you. I don't think Robert Saleh is the guy for this job.
Thank you.
The one thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to write them off yet. And the reason why, I just looked at their schedule, and I do think, I went back and rewatched that game. I do think that this team has resemblance of making a playoff caliber team. I think so. I think what I saw, and I think that Aaron Rodgers is very honest with themselves, and he can say that his week 1 performance wasn't great. They still got Garrett Wilson. They still got Breece Hall, and they still have a lot of talent on the defense. Their next 6 games, it's probably the easiest schedule in the NFL. And yes, you can't say every game's easy, but you got the Patriots twice. You got the Broncos. You have the Vikings. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers. If anything, the week 1 is the punch in the mouth that they needed. And I think that we'll know what type of team this is after the next couple weeks. And I'm going to give them some more leeway. Like I said, I think that Aaron Rodgers, he still showed me that he has resemblance of being a top 10 quarterback. He made some great throws. And I'm not going to count him too much out because their offensive line still needs time to gel. That was his first game back from his Achilles injury. He hasn't played in 12 months. They still got Garrett Wilson. So I still think that this team can make the playoffs, and I wouldn't write them out yet.
I think you're missing the point me and Parker are saying. I don't think anybody here is necessarily discrediting Aaron Rodgers. I think at the end of the day, you still need a leader of men,
Yes.
a guy that knows how to win, and a guy that knows how to, play to your strengths, if you will, and realize this isn't Madden. You can't just take a bunch of guys with names or, you have your quarterback being Aaron Rodgers and think that that's going to be enough to kind of break through. I think that's the real issue here at work. And I think that has been the issue I've had with Robert Saleh for a long time. He got that job in large part due to Nick Bosa having a breakout season and help transforming that 49ers defense with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. But when I look at it, I just don't think that, me personally, I don't think he's ever been a guy. Listen, you want your head coach to have answers to issues.
Yep.
And I never felt like Robert Saleh was that guy that had answers to issues. He was a guy that was very fortunate to have a pass rusher and a Nick Bosa who they drafted to help transform his defense. But if people forget, before that, there were fire Robert Saleh tweets going viral on social media. A lot of people didn't think that guy was a good defensive coordinator. But this shows you when you get talent in the building and you get a defensive coordinator who's hyped up on the sideline and looks like one of the bros, and he's like, let's go, baby, hyped up, pumped up. And everybody's so excited to see what that guy's going to bring if he becomes the head coach of said football team like the New York Football Jets. I think we got to start talking about it, though, at some point, though. Robert Saleh maybe not be cut out for the job. And this brings up a bigger issue, though, Parker, before we continue our talk. This brings up a bigger issue. And here's what the bigger issue it brings up. Well, what happens if they do move on from a Robert Saleh? Does Aaron Rodgers feel so inclined to play? the following year or play for the Jets? Will he ask to be let go? And then if Aaron Rodgers leaves, what trickles down after that? Does a guy like Garrett Wilson, who's Daniel is so high on, who literally spoke and raved about,
Yeah.
I believe you even say you believe that guy could be like a Devontae Adams at one point.
I think he's that talent.
I agree.
Baggy sleeves and all.
Right.
His sleeves look crazy that game.
But here's the thing. Does that guy then ask for a trade?
Yeah.
And I see our producer Marissa put in the comment section, Jordan Travis. I'm sorry, Jordan Travis ain't doing it.
I know.
He's just not. Good college quarterback. But I think that just speaks to a bigger issue. I think if Robert Saleh is gone, I think they have a bigger issue on their hand than the one that we're necessarily the one we're not necessarily discussing. Because right now we're just talking about Jets potentially making the playoffs or Jets being fraudulent, when I think the issue should be, a bigger one that we talk about. I want to keep the conversation rolling, man. I want to keep the conversation rolling while we have our guy Parker here. And I want to talk about week 2 a little bit more. Tonight, the Miami Dolphins, right? The Miami Dolphins take on the Buffalo Bills. And this is a big matchup in the NFCs. It's a matchup that we're not, I feel like we're not highlighting enough. Because I think these divisional games matter, especially early on. Who do y'all think, after watching week 1, who do y'all think is the better team out of the Dolphins, out of the Bills? For me, I think the Bills, personally. That's what I think. I think that I saw a Dolphins team that was very, very beatable, personally. I still think their offense is what it is. Obviously, there was a lot of turmoil going into that game with Tyreek Hill being, detained and then let go. And then obviously probably was an emotionally charged game for him versus teammates the whole 9 yards. I'll say this before I get your opinion, Parker, before I get your opinion, Daniel. I feel like the Bills are still too reliant on Josh Allen's running ability. And without that Hercules performance, I don't think they win that game. That's just my thoughts. Parker, what say you?
Yeah, no, I was worried going in because I'm like, I honestly think this Bills team, I know people talked a lot about, they're stripping the entire team. It feels like they're almost poised for, a little bit more than a soft reset roster-wise with a lot of the stuff that they were losing. But I think they came out and they look pretty good. And I thought this Dolphins team was pretty underwhelming early on. I do worry about the longevity, almost like we've talked about with the Ravens. If you're going to just lean on your quarterback to not only be a quarterback and pass the ball, but to be a running threat, be physical in that aspect, make diving touchdowns where he's getting helicoptered at the goal line. I mean, what does that look like when week 12, week 13, week 14 rolls around? What does he look like at the end of the year? Is he going to make it through the year?
Yeah, Daniel?
Yeah, and that's what I went back and rewatched. I'm trying to figure out if that can be changed by adding more weapons or if it's a Joe Brady system, because I remember at the end of last year when they switched from Dorsey to Joe Brady, he was running a lot more. And in that game against the Dolphins, he was being Superman and he was doing what Josh Allen does. So I'm in the limbo of figuring out, okay, how can they make life easier on Josh Allen? And on the flip side, how can you just let Josh Allen be Josh Allen? Because I saw a stat the other day, and I don't know if it's completely true, but I think in like the past 3 to 4 years, the Bills have not lost a game by more than a touchdown. And I'm going to go check if that stat is real. But if so, that means that Josh Allen is the type of quarterback you just let him play. And that's what lends me to believe that the Bills are going to be the better team in this game, simply because of the quarterback. The Dolphins may have an all-around better roster, but at the end of the day, if you're giving me one team, give me the better quarterback and give me in the fourth quarter the guy that I can say, hey, we got the offense, but I'm going to go let you play ball. So I would say the Bills are going to win this game. At the end of the day, I think having Josh Allen is the X factor for their team.
Yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room, though. The Bengals versus Chiefs is a big game. It's a huge game. It's a massive game. If it was any bigger, it would be on a Sunday at 4-ish p.m. And guess what? It's on a Sunday at 4 p.m. Listen, in my head, that went a lot better than when I actually said it.
It's the thought that counts, Malik.
It's
It's
the
the thought
thought that
that
counts, 100%.
counts.
Didn't work out the way I wanted it to there, but it's a big game. And I want to talk about it a little bit more, Parker. I kind of talked about it last night on State of the Jungle, but I want to get your overall thoughts on this game between the Bengals versus Chiefs. And let's be honest, it is Burrow versus Mahomes or Mahomes versus Burrow, whatever you prefer to go first. I want to get your overall thoughts on this game and the importance, the impact that it is, that it has for the Bengals season, but also for the Chiefs season.
Yeah, no, I think, and really, before I say anything, this game is going to come down to how are they able to maximize Chris Jones? How are the Chiefs able to maximize Chris Jones against, this Bengals offensive line that feels like it's one of, again, like we say every year, it's the best Bengals offensive line that they've rolled out since, however long it's been. And so, how is Chris Jones going to be able to impact this a front five? Are they going to use him and just pick on Alex Kappa and Trent Brown? Or are they going to move him back and forth and let him line up against guys like Cordell Volson and Orlando Brown Jr. on the other side? That's really what it comes down to. I'm excited to see George Karlaftis face off against Orlando Brown for a lot of the game. But I think overall, I hate when people bring up, must-win games when it's, September. I don't think there is such thing as a must-win game in September unless you're of the mindset where every game is a must-win game, which, is fine. But I think overall, this is going to be a great test for Bengals fans to see what does this offensive line look like. Is Joe Burrow still able to play up to competition in September, not just in December, in January, and potentially February? Like, is he able to step up his game and especially bounce back from a Patriots game last week where he even said himself that he didn't really feel great of how it looked? What does this coaching staff do to mitigate some of the issues that this Chiefs defense is going to cause? I like you guys have brought up yesterday, I do think the Chiefs didn't look unbeatable in that week one matchup. I think it was a good game, and I think the Ravens obviously have a lot of different pieces that, the Bengals don't and can't bring. But I think at the end of the day, they have weaknesses that I feel like the Bengals are going to be able to exploit, and I'm excited to see how that can go.
And Parker, when we discuss this game, right, let's say Monday morning, the Cincinnati Bengals have beat the Chiefs. What is the reason and what do you envision being the main X factor for the Bengals beating the Chiefs if they were to on Sunday?
I think this game is going to come down to who can keep whose offense off the field. I think this is going to be a defensively driven game. If you're going to let either of these quarterbacks, whether it's Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, if they're the quarterbacks that people say they are and think they are, whoever has, the most time of possession should win this ball game because they're running the ball, they're eating that clock like I talked about, but they're also getting more opportunities to score. It's which defense is able to generate the 3 and outs, bend but don't break and allow only field goals instead of touchdowns, create turnovers. And I really think this game comes down to trench play, the turnover margin, and honestly just who wins that time of possession battle, because that means you were actually in control of that game. Because I feel like in these big games, it really comes down to who can feel like they're in control, because as you can kind of chip away at the morale of an opposing team and make an opposing offense have to be like, oh, okay, we have to go out here. We have to make big plays. Our defense has to get turned out. Like where you start playing from behind, you get a little excited. You make some mistakes because you're trying to make that big play. And that's really what will break this game open. I think it's going to come down to a couple big plays. It's not going to be like a handful of explosive plays on either side. It's going to come down to those couple of, whether it's defensive breakdowns or just offensive guys winning their matchups. That's really what it comes down to on Monday morning.
There's a lot of Chiefs love in the comment section today. I'm laughing. I hope y'all know I appreciate this. I appreciate the banner. So, Joe Burrow has a lot of nicknames, but this is a nickname I've never seen before. They call him Joe Cool, Joe Burr, Joe Shiesty. Somebody called him, Coach Bob G, I'm sorry, says, check down Joey. That's what he called Joe Burrow. Check down Joey. That's a great nickname, man. I appreciate that, man. That makes me laugh. He said, let's see what check down Joey and the defense that can't tackle can do this week.
Both fair points. I posted at halftime. I'm excited to see the A-Dot conversations at the end of this game. And it was like the first 4 posts I saw post-game were all about, average depth of target for Joe Burrow.
It's Sorry, check down Joey still has me reeling right now. That's a good one. I'm gonna start using it. Check down Joey for the touchdown. But no, you know, I think these two teams always play each other tough. I think these two teams always come out rearing to go. I think these two teams will definitely play their best. I don't agree with the sentiment. Our guy Sean Brennan, who I literally can say is a friend of the show, even though he is a Chiefs fan. He says, no, not to hate, respect the Bengals, love hearing what they have to say. Malik has a ton of passion. It's fun to watch. I see a lot of people talking about Cam Taylor-Britt's comments apparently, where he said he wasn't too worried about Xavier Worthy. He said he just has speed. And not too much else. He can run jet sweeps, I believe he said, and he can run in a straight line, and he has speed, but that's about it. Listen, Cam Taylor-Britt's entitled to his opinion. If that gets his ass cooked, it gets his ass cooked for talking crap. Who cares? At the end of the day, these two teams got to play each other. I don't think people are shivering in their boots like, oh my God, Cam Taylor-Britt. Listen, this is what you want. You want chippiness, you want excitement, when people pumped up for this game. But back to what I was saying about Sean Brennan, I don't agree with the sentiment that the Chiefs are more talented than the Bengals on both sides of the football. I think both teams leave a lot to be desired at spots on their roster. There are spots where I feel better about the Bengals, such as I think the Bengals safeties for me, I feel a little better about. I think Trey Hendrickson's a better pass rusher than George Karlaftis. I think that the Bengals linebacking core in totality, now Nick Bolton is an absolute problem when he's on his game, but I think I take Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt over those guys. The Chiefs, I think, might have a more proven secondary or a cornerback room, I would say. Although you got to like the returns you've seen with guys from Dax Hill, obviously Cam Taylor-Britt. I don't agree with this sentiment that that the Chiefs are more talented on both sides of the football. Obviously, you could say Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the National Football League. Say Pacheco probably clears the running back room, the whole 9 yards. At the end of the day, both of these teams still got to go out there and play. I still choose the Bengals receiving weapons over the Chiefs. Travis Kelce is who he is, low aging at the same time. And Mike G, I don't give a damn. He says, oh, yeah, Malik, you actually want the Chiefs more fired up. I don't care. I don't play. I don't need to play. I sit up on here with a hot mic and I talk my talk and I say what I want to say and I say what I need to say. And yes, Chris Jones, how could I forget? Absolute fantastic player, one of the best interior pass rushers in the National Football League. Meant no disrespect to Chris Jones. Chris Jones is amazing in his own right. But yeah, Mike G, I don't care. I think we can all agree with that. We don't care. Like at the end of the day, if you need someone to talk shit to get you fired up for a game, what are we talking about here, man? The fact that you are one of the best teams in the National Football League and potentially this game could have playoff implications down the road should be all the passion you necessarily need. Someone talking crap or saying this and that should not get you pumped up or fired up for the game. All the motivation that you need to get fired up for the game should come within. That's just my take. Park, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that before I head off to a different subject.
First things first, I brought up Chris Jones the second we started the whole segment on the game. Mm-hmm. First off, I gotta say that. I mean, I did a whole article on Chris Jones just barely. Mm-hmm. But no, I do agree. I mean, this is back-to-back Super Bowl defending champs. If you have to, if you feel like you as the Chiefs need to get up off of, talk shows and podcasts and tweets, then I think it's a you problem, but obviously they shouldn't because they know what that success is. And like we talked about, when you have that history of winning, you want to get after that. But I also think, this Bengals team, I think, goes under the radar a lot for whatever reason it might be. Sometimes it's valid. Sometimes it feels a little funky. I have to say I had a Travis Kelce anytime touchdown bet last week, which, not excited about what he's going to bring to the Bengals because he didn't do a lot last week, so not really terribly concerned right now. I know he kind of is a guy that he's going to have a handful of really big games throughout the year and show up in those big moments, but he's not really like a true, I'm going to tear up this team the entire, hour-long game. He's a guy that's going to pop in and out. I'm honestly more worried about a guy like Worthy than a guy like Kelce, even though he is a tough guy to cover. He is a mismatch. It feels like over the last couple of seasons, he kind of just is settling into a more veteran role and, picking and choosing his spots. But I do worry about that. I feel like the Bengals have always struggled with covering tight ends, and I'm excited to see what they roll out this week because I know there's been a couple options, at least in my head, as far as who can play that, tight end coverage role, the quote unquote Trey Flowers role. Is it going to be a linebacker? One of these safeties? Is it, who is it going to be? Dejon Anthony, baby. Anthony. That's the guy. That's the guy for sure. I said that since they drafted him.
He was in there against Hunter Henry for play and had lockdown stellar coverage, and they weren't in a situation in which, they were in a situation where they had to go towards that quite often, because I think the Patriots came out in big packages trying to run the ball down the Bengals' throats, and it wasn't as obvious in passing situations where they spread things out. But I think you're going to see Dejon Anthony lined up against Travis Kelce and Noah Gray or whatever tight end that they might roll out there, man. But I love that for him too, because that guy, he is a Swiss Army knife. You don't know necessarily where to put him, but you do know that wherever you put him, he's gonna do a damn good job. Parker, before I let you go, man, because we've got to get to our fantasy football talk. What's your prediction for this game?
I think there's going to be a football game that happens in the afternoon on Sunday. No, I think it's a 3-point game.
Listen, I know it's political season, but could you have any more of a political answer than that?
No, I think it's a 3-point game. I do lean Chiefs just because I did not like what the Bengals rolled out last week. But again, I think it's 3 points. I think it's a close game. I think it could really swing either way. I would bet the Bengals to cover a 2.5-point line. I know it's a lot bigger than that, so I already have money on it. But I do think it's a tight game. They always play each other really well. It's going to come down, like I said, to a couple explosive plays and who's able to generate those, whose defense is able to be more disciplined throughout the entire game. But I'll say the Bengals don't break 30. I'll say 28-31 Chiefs.
Wow. What I'll say is I think that both teams are coming in with a lot of motivation. The Bengals have been beaten up in the media beyond this show. You've got pundits out there saying they're not tough, they're not physical, they're soft, they're a finesse team. It is Joe Burrow, washed. You got people out there really, discrediting what he's done. I've got a funny feeling those boys will come out ready to go, and I think they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, because I think the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they let a team in the Ravens who they should have honestly stomped, once they had the game in control. I think they let them hang around, and the Ravens almost made it a game, if that makes sense. They almost maybe took this thing down to the wire or to overtime, if you will. And,
inches.
By literally a game of inches. And I just don't think that they can do that with the Bengals. And if there's any team that the Bengals are going to get them ready to go, it's going to be this Kansas City Chiefs. And here's the thing. A lot of people think when I jump on this mic and I say what I want to say, it's because I'm interested in a hot take. I'm not interested in a hot take. I'm just going off of what has happened when Joe Burrow has faced the Chiefs. I don't think the 3-1 is a fluke. I can't go off of last year because he didn't play in that game. Jake Browning played in the game, and Jake Browning even almost at points looked like he was going to pull off the upset because he played phenomenal against them. I just think that they just don't match up well with the Bengals. I think that's just what it is. I think that they're a team in which I just think that it's going to be one of those things where, that team is going to be rearing, ready to go. And, Chiefs fans can feel how they feel. Not going to change my opinion, not going to change my stance on it. Bengals win this game. And I just hope that I see you guys in the comment section after this game takes place. Parker, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show again, my man. I'm going to be live after the game Sunday. Parker, maybe you got to come join me, man. If you're not doing anything, man, if you want to talk a little ball, man, Sunday night, come, hell or high water, the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's review this game. Let's talk it through. If you want, you're obviously a friend of the show, obviously a important part of who we'll be doing here at TWSN, man. I'm excited to be talking some ball with you, my man.
Yeah, I'd love to stop by. I'll talk ball all day, all night, so I'll be there for sure.
Yes, sir, my man. We'll just pencil it in, Marissa and Daniel. We'll pencil it in. We'll plan to have Parker on the show joining us on Sunday just to kind of talk through the Bengals victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Appreciate you, Parker. Appreciate you for joining the show, man. We want to jump on into this fantasy football content. Before we do, make sure you guys do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Without further ado, I want to bring in TWSN football analyst Michael O'Hara. Let's get this thing going. Mike, I appreciate you, man. We ran a little bit overboard talking NFL week 1, NFL week 2, but you know what? None of that matters right now because guess what? We've got our fantasy guy, Michael O'Hara, in the building. Here's the cool thing as well. I have literally named Mike the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show Fridays, Fantasy Fridays in my head. because it is such an integral part of what we do to try to get people ready to win their fantasy football leagues, right? I think Daniel might have done well was week one
I
as
did.
well.
I did pretty good.
And I think it's because he took your advice,
Oh,
Mike.
yeah.
You know, he sucks at fantasy football, but I think he took your advice and he said, you know what? What should I do? And then literally I saw him. I was like, what's wrong with you, man? He said, what would Michael Hara do? That's what he said. He said, what would Michael Hara do when he was trying to go set up his fantasy football lineup? So without further ado, the man of the hour, Michael Hara, how's it doing, man?
It's a great day to be here, Malik. Thursday Night Football on deck. We got a phenomenal matchup down in Miami to this evening. So I'm excited to get people ready for that matchup. But I also want to take some time to reflect on what we saw last week, because week one is the biggest week of the year in terms of finding takeaways and understanding how these players are going to be utilized in their offenses. And it's just a very big learning opportunity. And I hope everyone can take the information that we got and run with it for these upcoming 16 more weeks that we have of the fantasy football season.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk to you about that, man. You know, there are guys like I said, there are some pretty good games happening this week. I don't want to shoot too much out of that because I think we'll have you on tomorrow as well.
Yep.
Talk fantasy football week 2 and kind of. But I want to get. Is there any fantasy matchups in this game tonight that you're specifically looking at that you're like, I absolutely love said matchup for said player?
I mean, in this game, it's unfortunately there's not like a super great matchup to take advantage of in particular, because it's just a lot of set it and forget it type of guys. I mean, you're getting Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill into your lineup no matter what on the side of the Miami Dolphins. And then the questions are surrounding the running back situation in Miami. We know Raheem Mostert is already ruled out, and it could potentially be a multi-game absence for Mostert there. And then Devon Achane is a game-time decision. They're saying there's some optimism that he's going to play, but it's a really big question mark surrounding his health and availability. I'm viewing him more as a low mid-tier RB2 this week with upside, just because I think the ankle injury is going to limit the workload that we've typically seen, and the role that he played in the offense in week one was just absolutely phenomenal. But the more interesting things are on the Buffalo side of the ball for me. First off, was starting with the pass catchers. We've got Keon Coleman, and I just think this guy is undoubtedly the alpha receiver in this offense. He ran a full complement of routes in just his first game as a rookie, and he led the team in target shares. So this is clearly Josh Allen's go-to option. There's no question whether or not he is. And people were suspect of his prospect profile, not really getting a ton of separation in some down the field questions. But this is going to be his number one receiver, and he'll be competing with Dalton Kincaid for targets. But speaking of Dalton Kincaid, I don't think it's time to panic just yet. He had a pretty abysmal showing in week one, but he was getting bracketed and blanketed in coverage by the Cardinals. It was pretty clear that the Cardinals' game plan was to take Dalton Kincaid out of this game and make Keon Coleman and the other questionable receivers in this Buffalo receiving room beat them, and they succeeded in doing so on the back of some fantastic work from Josh Allen around the goal line, punching in those 2 scores. But I'm really bullish on the rushing attack for the Buffalo Bills this week. I think obviously Josh Allen is going to be a guy you get into your lineup no matter what. That's really a no-brainer. But the switch to a run-heavy rushing attack that we've seen out of the Buffalo Bills since Joe Brady took over, it's just really absurd. Last week, the Bills ranked 31st in first down pass rate, so second in first down rush rate. They ranked 23rd in pass rate over expectation overall for the game in week one. So I'm really looking to get James Cook into my lineup as well as a touchdown-dependent RB2. But other than that, it is mostly just your set it and forget it guys. There aren't really any fringe guys that I'll be looking to jam into my lineup this week.
Yeah, completely. And once again, if everybody's watching, make sure you guys can drop down your comments in the comment section, as well as we can do the same thing tomorrow as well. We got a question about this game from Gary Jellison. He said, how do Kincaid and Knox match up with the Miami linebackers and safeties?
So Knox is not really one that you're going to be starting fantasy-wise. He is more he ran a good number of routes, more than I anticipated for him in week one. But the matchup for Dalton Kincaid, I think, is fine. They've got quality DBs, but I mean, you're gonna expect to see the linebackers in Miami covering Dalton Kincaid throughout the majority of this matchup. And I'll take Dalton Kincaid against any linebacker just in general in the NFL. There's not very many linebackers who I think can keep up with Dalton Kincaid in terms of his receiving ability. And like I said last week, his troublesome performance was really just because of the resources that the Cardinals devoted to covering Dalton Kincaid. So unless he's just completely bracketed and double covered, I mean, there was a play against the Cardinals last week where there were legitimately 4 defenders around Dalton Kincaid for the Cardinals. So I don't really think, I don't want to say Dalton Kincaid's matchup proof, but this Miami defense is not one that I'm particularly concerned about covering Dalton Kincaid to a degree where he is just completely removed from the game plan unless they devote resources like the Cardinals did last week.
Completely. I got 2 more questions for you about this game. You talked about Keon Coleman. Are you concerned at all, about his matchup with Jalen Ramsey, and how do you, project him this week, right? Because obviously last week they faced the Cardinals. Are you just as confident as him this week, and would you even consider, him being in your flex spot if you have him on your team?
I'm not trying to get him into my flex spot unless I have to. I mean, personally, I have a team where I will be starting Keon Coleman in my flex spot because of T. Higgins' injury. But unless you have to, I really wouldn't be, because the matchup with Jalen Ramsey isn't ideal. We saw Brian Thomas Jr. have some success against Jalen Ramsey last week. I do not think Keon Coleman is in the echelon of receivers that Brian Thomas Jr. is. I was far higher on Thomas than I am on Coleman. And I mean, obviously just draft capital reflects that, but it is definitely a tough matchup. I don't think that Coleman will draw shadow coverage by any means from Jalen Ramsey. He doesn't have that sort of respect from NFL defenses just yet. It's not a great matchup. He will see his fair share of routes and snaps against Jalen Ramsey. He ran 100% of his routes on the outside last week, so he's not going to get in any of those easy matchups in the slot against their slot corner. But he's just a guy you'll start if you have to, and this is a guy that I hope we can start later on in the NFL season. But in week 2, I wouldn't want to be relying on Keon Coleman.
Completely. And we can get to some of these, obviously we'll go to week 2 in a second, but Sean Brennan had another question. This is more NFL in general. He said, I got 2 running back spots. He's got, I believe, Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, J.K. Dobbins, and Brian Robinson Jr. Which 2 would you start with?
So I'm going to lean Rashad White and Brian Robinson here. I know Stevenson had a good week last week, but I don't see the game script or just this Patriots offense in general leading to a situation where he's getting 25 carries again like this season. I really think that the 25 carries he saw last week will be the most that he sees for the entirety of the 2024 season. So I'm still going to kind of lean on my priors here and go with Rashad White and Brian Robinson Jr. It was really encouraging to see what J.K. Dobbins did on the ground last week. I think he was in a near 50-50 split with Gus Edwards in week 1. I think we start seeing that move towards a 60-40 type of deal, or maybe even greater in J.K. Dobbins' favor. But I'm going with White and Robinson here, kind of just leaning on who I've enjoyed or preferred in the preseason rankings.
That's our guy, Michael here. Mike, I appreciate you so much for joining the show. Obviously, we wanted to have you a little bit longer, but that's what Fantasy Fridays are for here on the Sit Down Malik Wright morning show. Mike will be joining us tomorrow to discuss your favorite matchups this week, your starts, your sits. The guys that you listen, Mike and Steve Bradshaw are going to get you guys all set for your fantasy matchups. Listen, I'm retired from fantasy football. I was too good. I decided to retire. But all jokes aside, though, these guys are the best at what they do, and I think that they'll have some information for you to be able to take advantage of some of these fantasy matchups to help you win week 2 of your fantasy football league. Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining the show. Before we get out of here, we've got Jerry Rice's son asking a question. Brandon Rice is in the comment section. He says, are we confident in the chain with the ankle, or do I play forward? Then I can put more in the flex. I want you to answer that real quick before you head out of here.
Yeah, I do think that you have to really play Devon Achane if he's healthy and active. I mean, obviously he's not going to be fully healthy this week if he plays, but if he's active, you have to. I mean, the upside is just, it's not anything that Jerome Ford can reach, just his role in the receiving game. I mean, he got the goal line work too last week. It's a 185-pound running back who's taking snaps from the 1-yard line. It's just not something that I anticipated, or many people anticipated Devon Achane to be doing for the Dolphins this year. But he punched it in from the 1-yard line last week. He had insane usage as a receiver. He was the RB3 on the week in a week where he averaged 2.4 yards per carry. Like he can get it done in just so many different ways that I think even if he has a reduced workload and reduced effectiveness, he's got to be a guy that you get into your lineup this week.
Mike, appreciate you so much, my man, for joining the show and for all your input as always. Make sure you guys follow Mike on X or Twitter, whatever you call it these days. Twitter handle is right below him. And it's also in the description. Mike, looking forward to seeing you and Steve tomorrow to get us ready for Fantasy Football Fridays here on the Sit Down Malik Wright Morning Show. Enjoy your day, my man.
See you guys tomorrow. Should be a good one.
Yes, sir, man. Yes, sir. Thank you. We want to thank you guys so much for spending, again, your mornings with us on the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. If you guys would do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. This is the part where we guys give you our favorite bets, right? Our favorite bets for Thursday night football. Obviously, tomorrow we'll have our favorite bets for week 2 as a whole. But right now, we want to focus on our favorite bets for Thursday night football, as well as I'm going to give you guys some of my favorite bets for UFC briefly. Tomorrow, after the weigh-in, is when I'll really dive into this, and I'll give you guys some plays that I really, really like for this fight for these upcoming card that I feel like you guys need to hammer. But right now, we want to discuss some of our favorite bets for Thursday night football tonight. Daniel, this is where you take over, my man.
Man, I'm excited for this game. And overall, we're excited for NFL Week 2. If you guys want, we have our full Patreon, not just me, not just Malik, but our entire team have our full best bets. Go down to the description. Check it out. We've got a group chat every single week, every single day. We're talking MLB. We're talking NFL. We're talking NBA. So if you guys are interested in sports betting, I strongly advise you guys go check it out. But let's discuss this game. This is props galore, in my opinion. This is a divisional game, and this is a game where both teams have high flying offense, especially when you look at the Dolphins. So first prop, I'm going to look at the side that I'm much more confident in right now. I'm more confident in what I've seen out of the Bills. And the reason why I feel like I've got a better read on their offense really is Josh Allen playing Superman, like we discussed. But there is a guy that I really like, and I think his line is too low, and that's Khalil Shakir. We discussed Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman is a great outside wide receiver. I think he has a good game. I'd be looking at Khalil Shakir over 3.5 receptions. And the reason why I really like this is you go and look at what they did in that week 1 matchup. There were 2 plays, and obviously it was just two plays designed strictly for Khalil that were immediate, quick wide receiver screens. And that is something that average depth to target, that is 2 yards, that is behind the line of scrimmage, and that gets you quick targets. And I also looked at Josh Allen was extremely confident in going after Khalil Shakir. He was confident. He's a guy who has rapport with him after last year. And another one, to be honest with you, Keon Coleman's reception line's at 3.5. I think I might actually like that one even better than Khalil Shakir's. I like both of them to get over 3.5 receptions. But Keon Coleman is a guy, if we're going to discuss him, immediately, first thing they came into the game, threw a 50-50 ball to Keon Coleman down the right sideline. And that's something, obviously, it was the Cardinals defense, but to be honest with you, that's what I want to see. I want to see a rookie wide receiver gaining confidence from his quarterback, 50-50 ball to his guy, and he hauled it in for the first catch of the game. So I'm looking at Keon Coleman as well. I think Keon Coleman, you could look at his yards over 43.5. I'm a little concerned about that Jalen Ramsey matchup, but to be honest with you, I saw too much good stuff out of him last game to even doubt playing him or, not betting on him, because like I said, this is the lowest you're going to be able to get him. Keon Coleman is a guy where he saw the most routes out of any player on the Bills last week, and he gave me zero reason to believe why that won't happen again this week. So if I'm going to give you guys another prop, if I'm looking at the Miami Dolphins side of things, I'm looking at the quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and I think he's a guy who has had great success against the Buffalo Bills in the past. But I'm actually looking at him to go over in his pass completions. And the reason why I like this is it's at 22.5. And I think this is way too low for an offense like the Miami Dolphins. They play a lot of quick hitting, a lot of quick hitters. Tyreek Hill is a guy that everybody loves. I don't think he's going to have a monster game over top. The way the Bills have played their defense, they really have played that cloud coverage. They really played that back end defense to where they're not going to take too much of a chance with their safeties not being as consistent as a Jordan Poyer or a Micah Hyde. So if I'm looking at something, Tua Tagovailoa over 22.5 pass completions, a lot of quick passes, a lot of quick screens. We know how the Dolphins like to play their offense. There is no Raheem Mostert. I don't think their ground game is going to be elite. So I'd be looking at Tua Tagovailoa pass completions and wait to see about the running backs injuries like we discussed with Michael O'Hara. But like I said, huge Keon Coleman fan this week. If I'm looking at something else too, I think you guys can also sprinkle a little Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen could have a big game today. And I look at, his over passing touchdowns, 1.5. This is way too low for Josh Allen at minus 102 for a guy that's done this in every single game in his career against the Miami Dolphins. What are we talking about? Every single game. And yes, if you want to scrap out history, that's fine. Let's look at what's actually been going on this season. Trevor Lawrence had a good game against the Miami Dolphins defense. And yes, he didn't throw for 2 passing touchdowns, but I would be looking at Josh Allen over 2 or 1.5 passing touchdowns. Even though his receiving core isn't great, I still think that he gained enough confidence from that week 1 matchup. You got Dalton Kincaid, you got Keon Coleman, you got Khalil Shakir. Josh Allen is a guy that he can spread the ball out, and these weapons aren't terrible enough to say, holy crap, in the red zone, they're not going to even throw the ball. I'm so confident he's going to get outside the pocket, and 1.5 passing touchdowns. You can even look at a sprinkle of 3 passing touchdowns. That's something else I would be looking at. And just overall, when we're discussing the game, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to pick a side. I definitely lean the Buffalo Bills, who are at home, but I would be looking at taking, or the Miami Dolphins are at home, but I would be looking at taking the over in this game. 48.5 for a primetime spot where we see 2 high-flying offenses. Once again, I don't trust the Bills defense enough. I just discussed how they play this top-down defense. They play this, back-end defense. I think the Miami Dolphins will be able to pick them apart. And I think the same thing for the Buffalo Bills. I don't trust the Miami Dolphins pass rush. It's been abysmal. They've dealt with injuries. Jalen Phillips injured. Bradley Chubb injured. Christian Wilkins is out of the room. So I look at the 48.5. I think this is far too low. I think we see a lot of points. Both teams have great weapons. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, James Cook. The 48.5 over is probably going to be one of my favorite plays. So just a little recap. I love the over 48.5. I love Keon Coleman over 3.5 receptions. And James Angelo said Josh Allen anytime touchdown. I definitely think that's a solid play, and I definitely think it'd be worth it. To be honest, I'm looking at him more from the passing standpoint, just because this is a matchup with the Dolphins. He typically doesn't run a lot against them. Rushing or attempts he does, but in the red zone, it's more passing. So for me, I think Josh Allen is going to have a huge game passing, and I also think the dude could pass for over 300 yards.
I'm going to go through a speed round before we head out of here of some of my favorite bets of this game. I love Dawson Knox receptions at 1.5. I think he hits that prop. I feel very confident in that prop. I feel like that prop is too low. I also like Mac Hollins, his receptions over 1.5. Again, I'm not exactly sure why the odds makers are making these so low, but I appreciate you. Sincerely, I appreciate you. Because you figure this is going to be a game in which, I feel like Josh Allen's going to do a very good job of shredding the ball around, because they haven't, I guess, realized who their true number one is. Yes, we can say Keon the whole 9 yards, and I agree he will emerge into that, but I just think that there's still so much unknown, and you got to think that Jalen Ramsey or one of these, I think the Dolphins, I'm sorry, I think their defensive game plan is going to be focused on trying to take that guy out of the game, if that makes sense. I like James Cook as well. His receptions at 2.5. Yeah. I think this is a game where you see the tight ends, the Mac Hollins, and the running backs get involved in the passing game in a big way. I feel very good, very, very good about that. One thing I love about FanDuel, Daniel, is, and they're not sponsors of the show, but I just want to make sure I put that out there. But the one thing I love about FanDuel is because they have so many different alternate lines of things you can do. A prop that I found that I really, really like, and this is, again, me getting really, really weird. It's almost like last week when I was like, I think Noah Gray is going to have over 1.5 receptions, and that thing took place. But I like Tua had 50 yards in the first quarter. Tua had 50 yards in the first quarter. Passing is only minus 160.
Wait, how many?
50.
Oh, wow.
50 yards in the first quarter is minus minus 150 or something like that, or minus 160. I'm not exactly sure if the odds changed or not on that. That's a prop that I really, really feel confident about, because this is a pass happy offense, and you figure this is an offense in which they're gonna throw it to their receivers, right, and they're gonna allow them to run wild. Can Tua get 50 yards in the first quarter? No doubt they're probably gonna get like 2 possessions, right? right? That's just two 25-yard gains. I think that happens. I think Tua hitting 50 yards in the first quarter is a prop that I like. And if you're looking at that, something I would definitely go with. I was going to do my UFC, some of my favorite UFC props, because I want you guys to take advantage of them before the lines get crazy. But I'm going to do you all a solid, because I believe in having the best analysis out there when it comes to my UFC picks. I'll wait for the what do you call it? I'll wait for the weigh-ins to happen, and then I'll feel more confident regarding those. But there are some early props that I was looking at, if you guys kind of want to look at right now. Again, briefly, because we're about to head out of here. But Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso to go over 4.5 rounds is a prop that I really, really like for this card. These are two women that know each other. This is the trilogy fight between them. Obviously, Valentina got caught in a submission late in their last fight, which we saw. I'm not the last fight, the first fight, in which we saw Alexa Grasso take her championship. And then we saw them head to I believe it was a draw, but I believe Valentina Shevchenko won that fight personally. I'm going with Alexa Grasso personally to win that fight. I just think that when it comes to the UFC stats say when a fighter goes from 35 years old, the downward trend of them, winning a championship, it decreases. And I just don't think that's I don't think that's something that's going to really work out for Valentina. As great as I view Valentina, as much as I think that she's truly one of the best, I just don't know if that's something that's going to work in the favor of Mercer. If we also can go just to the general thing, I don't want people to think we're talking about Bills Jets. Bills Dolphins right now. Also, Diego Lopez KO submission over a guy like Brian TCD Ortega is sitting at plus 165. Diego Lopez is a finisher through and through, and it's a prop that I like. It's a prop that I feel very, very confident about. And tomorrow I'll dive a little more deeper into these picks after they weigh in, because how these fighters look on the scale is going to be so important and impactful to you guys having a successful betting day at UFC 306. But last prop that I really, really like for this card, obviously, before I finalize all my picks tomorrow morning and we talk them through with you guys, Irene Aldana. I think Irene Aldana beats Norma Dumont. I think she's going to be good enough to stuff the takedowns, good enough to force the action, to stay on the feet, and good enough to put hands on Norma Dumont. And Norma Dumont is a girl that we've seen her tested. We've seen what it could look like when she is tested. Some stuff left to be desired, but I think that Irene Aldana is going to be able to win this in large part due to her boxing. Hell, it wouldn't even shock me if she gets her pretty tired, and then it was able to get a takedown of her own and finish her via ground and pound. This wouldn't shock me at all, because I think that Irene Aldana is a girl who's been in a lot of dog fights, is a girl that is out there, a girl that is ready. And it's just one that I feel very, very confident about. So again, Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso to go over 4.5 rounds. Alexa Grasso money line if you're feeling a little froggy. Diego Lopez KO submission prop at plus 165. That's double chance if you're looking on FanDuel. And Irene Aldana to beat Norma Dumont at minus 118. Those are some props I'm looking forward to for UFC 306. Again, tomorrow I have the rest of my props that I like for this card. No doubt it's going to be a profitable one. We appreciate y'all. Dana, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add before we head out of here.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to get this out there. Once again, everybody, if you guys want our full best bets, go to the Patreon link in the description.
And it's right above Daniel as well, too.
QR code should be right here. I just want to get this out here. I have a long shot 2-leg for the NFL, and these are my two favorite plays. Kyron Williams, who have 100 rushing yards. He did it in both games against Arizona Cardinals, and that'll be it for me.
You said Kyron, you said 2-leg.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't know. Yeah, Kyron Williams and Terry McLaurin, 100+ receiving yards.
All right, Kyron Williams and Terry McLaurin, 100+ receiving yards. That's his long shot parlay for the week 2 of the NFL. We gave you our favorite Thursday Night Football bets for this evening, and you got a little taste of what our UFC picks are like for Saturday evening as well. We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Sit Down Malik Wright Morning Show. We'll be back live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Fantasy Football Friday, getting you all set for your fantasy football lineups and so much more. Want to thank you guys for spending your mornings with us. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. And until next time, remember, there's only one way you should be watching sports in the morning, talking sports in the morning, and that is the right way.